Hello, everyone. Welcome to Blabbit. This is where we have experts on every week who are revealing their tips, their insights, and their secrets. And this week is no different. In fact, it's even deeper because there's quite a bit of mystery surrounding the work that this show's guest expert does. And we'll get to that in just a moment. For those of you tuning in for the first time, I am one of the co-hosts of Blabbit. My name is Paul Geiger. I'm a New York City presentation coach and public speaking expert, and I talk with individuals and organizations about getting really clear about their messaging and then feeling really good about delivering that message with comfort and with impact. How you doing today, Glenn?
Well, I'm a little bit of technical difficulties, so I apologize to anyone during the show. My name is Glenn Ingram. I've been working in training, coaching people with sales backgrounds to help them be better communicators, better influencers for the better part of 2 decades, trying to help people be able to convey information. Eric, thanks for joining us. Tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Thanks for having me. Eric Peterson. I'm a private investigator. I own a private investigations firm and a security company. Did 20 years in law enforcement, been doing the investigations and security field for over 7 years.
Mm-hmm. Well, Eric, thank you so much for being our guest here today. Now, I think when most people think about a private investigator, they usually are thinking about digging in deep into something. So what are some of the more common things that people want to get to the bottom of?
Lately, a lot of scams, people doing them wrong, whether it's a business or an individual, people that they want to date. They want to find out who this person is about, if they're given a real name, if they're married or not married, criminal background, things like that. And then, there's been a lot of civil and criminal and family law stuff that we've handled. And it's, in my opinion, it's increased in the past couple of years.
Interesting. Would you say that delineate for us the difference between the corporate investigations, the family investigations? Do both of them require the same amount of time and energy, or does it really depend on the case?
It depends on the case, the situation. Typically the corporate or civil, and then you've got same civil, family law, and then criminal. So sometimes it could be a little bit less intense than others, but a lot of them encompass so much, and it's a web of just craziness that I have to deal with on a couple different sides. To give you an example, I have a business dispute. People think they owe money to each other, and then one person started going after relatives and incorporating a little violence into the mix. And so that's pretty extensive in terms of investigations, and then security, making sure everybody's safe at their homes because of these threats.
Mm-hmm. We're having a little bit of trouble with your transmission, Glenn. I'm not exactly sure when you're going to get back in. I think we'll have to.
Can you type it? Can you type it, Glenn?
Yeah, that's true. You could put a comment in the chat, and then I will be your voice due to technical difficulties. All right, we'll do something like that. All right. Now, I saw a video recently of you, Eric, and you said, it was an interesting comment, and it really made me think. You said, the crazier it gets, the calmer I become, or something like that. So what is we're all a little intrigued by what the level of craziness might be.
I kind of view it as a puzzle that kind of gets thrown on a table, and initially I start figuring it out and putting the pieces of the puzzle together, and then I'll go back to it, and then I'll think about it, lose sleep over it, things like that, because obviously I take my job personally, and I'm dealing with people when they're at their worst, and whether it's maybe they've been accused of a crime, victim of a crime, dealing with a crazy family law situation, or in the example that I just gave you with the business dispute where the guy thinks he's owed money, and he sent people out to intimidate family members, and in different counties and all over. So I, for one reason or another, based on my training experience and the way my mind works, the more complex, the more at ease I get. Maybe I'm just not too into the simple things. I'd like to just dive in and really analyze and figure out what situation I'm being presented with and how we can effectively come to a positive conclusion. So, yeah, it's just, I guess, maybe just a state of mind that happens because of what I've experienced throughout my career. I enjoy that space.
Mm-hmm. Now, was your background as a police officer, does that do you feel that is a qualification that a good private investigator needs to have? Obviously, you do have it, but is that a requirement? Does it make it a little bit easier to get doors to open if you have a past history of working within that realm?
It helps, and I think the biggest thing is it helps with interviews and interrogations and reading people, knowing about the law, knowing about scams and crimes and how people behave.
Mm-hmm.
And so it definitely helps. In terms of licensing, each state regulates their own licensing. And if you have 6,000 hours, for example, in the state of California, you can qualify, if investigative experience, you can qualify to get your license. And so it helps in terms of the licensing, but a lot of people that have been in law enforcement automatically think that they can be a great private investigator. And that's definitely not the case. It's more finesse, creativity, thinking outside the box, personality. A lot of law enforcement people think that they can, maybe they just don't get out of that mentality of, well, I showed up on a scene, or I'm handling this and you need to listen to me. And that's definitely not the case. You need to know how to talk to people, how to listen to people. So to answer your question, it's definitely helped, but it's not the end all be all.
So you bring up a really good point about communication style, because we do cover this a lot on Blabbit, which is being persuasive. And certainly there is, and I always joke with people, you in business, you want to be persuasive. You don't want to be coercive. And what you were describing before, the idea of people utilizing violence, obviously, is the coercive side. And I realize that there may be some coercion that does go into you doing your work. But in terms of persuasion, what's been your experience with getting people to trust you enough to give you the information that ultimately will lead to a clearer picture of what the truth is?
Each situation is different. So I look at that individual and what would be their motive, like you said. And sometimes people's motives are just about being honest. Sometimes people's motives are just about, maybe not getting arrested. So in other words, we had a case where this individual, these two companies merged, and the one company absorbed the previous company's employees that the company that they bought. And this employee, over the course of maybe about 2 years, stole cash. And we proved it. I brought in my forensic investigator. We proved it happened. We contacted the person. We interviewed her. And we're beholden to the client. We're not beholden to the police. So we're beholden to the client. So the client has an option to report this theft to the police or just handle it with the individual. So in that particular case, we just told her, square this away, fix this, and perhaps they're not going to report it to the police, because at the end of the day, it was a felony. This person has kids. She wants to be there for her kids. She doesn't want that felony on her record. So you look at the case. It's a case-by-case basis where you look at that individual, what they did, their motive, and how we can get to the truth. And as soon as I start talking to them, then I'll figure out. But more often than not, sometimes people just want to get things off their chest. People people like to talk, so and I like to listen. So it's different for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Is this any better, Paul?
Yeah, I think that's a little bit better, Glenn.
Well, we'll use cell phone technology. So, I'm glad I'm finally able to join the party because you guys are pretty cool. Eric, the question I was trying to ask is, how much do you deal with people that are being reactive because they could have done some type of background check investigating prior to what? Now they're in a situation where maybe it's someone they're dating, someone that's working for them, and they're a little bit nervous about the situation where they could have been more proactive and done some investigation with you to maybe avoid some situations.
9 times out of 10. It also happens in business disputes. I deal with attorneys all the time and work hand in hand with attorneys. And had they just maybe hired an attorney to do a contract, things would have been prevented. So I had, what I'm seeing a lot right now is dating scams. People, maybe, a couple of cases I've gotten recently where guys are asking women for money that they've never met and trying to get them involved in fraudulent activity and things like that. And for some reason, one reason or another, the individual's duped and, they've put out, $10,000 or whatever. And then they've called me and they say, oh, well, I don't have much money to hire you. And I said, well, I would have been less than the $10,000 that you paid this individual that you never met before. So it happens a lot in business situations. It happens a lot in dating. Like the case that I told you about that, this was a family friend that they knew, this guy that's threatening, that started threatening violence and had his people commit violence against multiple people. Mm-hmm. That could have been prevented had maybe they had a contract with this individual one-on-one and just be done with it, and clear communication. It's just sad about the way things have gotten to be. But yeah, I think you got to front load things. You got to look at each situation different, whether you're hiring somebody or, getting into a relationship with somebody or anything. It's always good to step back from the situation and look at what you're doing.
So with regards to the fraud that you're seeing, is that first red flag always money?
Yeah. And I think there's a bit of social engineering. So maybe you look at behaviors, what they're saying. So one case I handled, I helped out a person who thankfully didn't give money. She was communicating with a guy who said he was in the military, and he even had a uniform and had the proper background and all that stuff. And he was just a scam artist. And so along the way, we collected evidence, and I showed her, hey, this doesn't come back to an individual. There's nobody with this such name who lives at this location or this city. So we gather that piece of evidence, but she could have been out thousands of dollars had she not stepped back and called me. So yeah, it involves money, but sometimes, scam artists, do a slow play, they'll just, keep it slow and then maybe ask after a couple of months. So you never know their motives. I find it funny that a lot of these people, if you see it on Dr. Phil, they'll meet these people online in Nigeria. Oh no, he loves me. And, the guy's 20 years younger and she's given like $30,000 to him. And the family members are like, come on, stop. So.
Well, there's an example of the non-do-gooders being persuasive as well. So are there any current scams around the uncertainty that we all are feeling with the virus and whatnot? Are you seeing any of that, or is that small and outside of your purview?
Yeah, I get a lot of calls. I mean, construction tends to be a lot where the individual, will ask for a payment up front and then just not come back and do the work. And maybe this was a wife and a husband, and the wife dealt with the construction guy to do a patio. Mm-hmm. And she didn't do her due diligence in terms of maybe looking at reviews, checking his license, checking to see if he's had any complaints statewide. But regardless, don't pay the guy up front. So she paid him up front. Let's say it was $8,000. then now they're trying to pursue a small claims, and he's nowhere to be found. And so, it's just a lot because of what's happened in the past couple of years. You see the worst in people. You already, in my opinion, and what I do, you already see the worst in people with respect to family law, businesses and crimes and scams. It goes without saying. But I think in the past couple of years, it's been heightened because maybe people haven't gotten the work that they want, or works, it's been dry for certain industries. And then individuals just think that they can get a quick buck by messing with people. And so yeah, I've seen it. And then I've also seen a lot of tension with respect to family law cases where, in the family law brings out the best in individuals. And I'm not being serious on that. And it's you see the worst in people on those. And, whether the people are cheating or saying that they're working or saying that they're not working and they're working. So just taking advantage of people. So yeah, I've definitely seen an upkick in the past couple of years as it pertains to money, scams, business things, just people being not so nice.
So do you see, with being based in California, so one of these coasts where a lot of times some of these scams may start there and then work their way across the country, are there things that are happening newer now that people maybe across the country should be aware of, or some, I guess, the current things that people are really trying to do to scam people, again, whether it be businesses or individuals?
I think every region has its own unique characteristics. We're in Southern California, Orange County, LA area. And I think that sometimes when you get more money involved in, the scam gets higher, whether it's fraud, identity theft, skimming money off from your company, any of that stuff. So I think when you see some of that more income, you see bigger stakes. But I think you're always going to have, and there's going to be those instances where you have family members taking advantage of people. So in places where maybe there's elderly homes or things like that, and you have workers taking advantage or family members taking advantage. So each region has its own unique characteristics, but yeah, it's definitely nationwide in terms of just people taking advantage.
All right. So I'm just thinking in terms of what is the most vulnerable point that you think people are at? In other words, I understand when there are agreements and arrangements. I mean, there's all different types of disputes that go on. But just for a moment, I want to think about the points of entry, the vulnerability of people utilizing different medium, whether it's by phone, by email, by social media. What have been some of the more unique scams that you've seen that our audience, that our listeners can be watching out for? I mean, there's the famous story, and we've all experienced it, of the prince who has money tied up and he needs to get that money out and needs your help. I even remember one where a friend of mine who I knew casually, all of a sudden I get an email saying, I'm stuck in Europe on vacation with my family and I lost my wallet. Of course, I don't know, maybe because I grew up in the New York area, I always look at everything like, really? But what has been, what are some of the more vulnerable places that we all should be on the lookout for now?
So, you hear it on the news a lot. Robocalls, number one. So as technology increases, people will get more savvy. So robocalls, are popular, where you get the warranty calls. Some that I see quite frequently, and people try to do it to me, a text, from like a weird number or just not a normal number saying, hey, thanks for paying this particular bill. Here's a little gift for you. And then they send a link. Now, I don't know what the intent of that scam or what they're trying to do, but regardless, people want you to click on stuff. So now they're expanding it to phones.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I've seen that too, Eric. I recently had one where it was just a text, and it said, "We've temporarily shut down your Amazon account. To reinstate it, just click on this link." It's like, come on, guys. You're going to have to do better than that.
Yeah, and I congratulate you for doing the New York, side look to everything, because you have to. And so getting back to it, the email in this networking group I'm involved in, we actually got I don't know how this person did this, but he posed as the president of the group and sent an email with a link saying, "Hey, your dues are whatever, and blah, 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 click on this link." And he's got nothing to do with the payment of the dues or anything like that. Mm-hmm. And so, text and email are going to be the top two, in my opinion. And then just keeping your computer safe with malware, and just trying to keep everything safe in terms of your passwords, and, checking things periodically. And so we got two Glenn.
A double dose of Glenn.
I got an echo. So just keep everything secure with all your stuff, and then at the end of the day, have that look that you gave. Step back. Whether it's you meet somebody on a dating site, whether you get an email. There's one that there's nothing you can do about this one. Like you talked about, hey, I got a friend in jail. A friend of ours got a call and posed as somebody in a local jail, and they said, hey, your son got arrested, he needs bail, and I think she sent a couple $1,000. And so, but she could have just stopped, take a breath, talk to her husband, go online, check out the website, see if he got booked into jail on the county website. Don't send any money. Just go, okay, you know what? Let me call you back. What's the number? Because anybody can spoof a number. So these people, find these easy targets. Often they're maybe older people, or people are busy that maybe they're like, okay, I'll just click on this link. So take a deep breath and step back and analyze it. And if it's true, great. If it's not, you've avoided it.
Mm-hmm. Now, you said spoof a phone number. For some of our listeners that may not be aware of what's going on, does it mean to spoof a phone number or to spoof an email address?
You could just duplicate it. And then oftentimes, like you were saying, Paul, sometimes they'll duplicate it, and if you look at it and analyze it, you see, okay, it's a little bit off. So like that Amazon, it perhaps, obviously it wasn't linked to Amazon website, but maybe it was just Amazon and they had a little something after it. It looked professional, but basically you're creating a fake account that looks like the real account, like the person that you're dealing with. And then in terms of spoofing a number, there's so many, websites or apps or whatever, where you can just pretend to be somebody else's number, or just, have that particular number for that particular time.
So you help people with catfishing. I think everyone's familiar with that TV show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to say, are you telling us, Eric, that there is an app for that?
Mm-hmm. For all of it.
There's an app for everything.
No.
And I missed it. Brett Fairbanks said, taking advantage of victims' generosity and human concerns.
That's it. And so, regardless of kind of fail safes that you put in terms of technology, there's that social engineering aspect. You're only as good as that person handling that equipment. So in other words, if there's you're going to an event and there's a thing that you put bags into an X-ray machine, or something to see if you have metal on, going through the metal detector. Well, you're only as good as that person that's handling that machine. You can socially engineer that person potentially, or he may not be paying attention. He or she may not be paying attention at that time. So there's always, as long as you add that human component to it, I think there's room for that scam, that failure.
Mm-hmm. So really the best advice is to not be quite as reactive at times. When you see something, try to compartmentalize the emotion and realize if something comes at you out of the blue, it's it's probably blue for a color, for a reason. It's that color for a reason. And it's,
Yeah, go figure. Take a step
real.
back. I mean, in society, everybody's quick to comment, judge, think something's real. Step back and maybe look at both sides. And at the end of the day, that's what I do with all my investigations, because there's clients that call me that perhaps that they want to do some sort, for example, a guy wants to know if a gal that he's divorcing is, with another guy. And I said, well, I'm not providing you any information about that particular person, because what if you go and threaten him and now it's like, so you never know. So I'm obviously analyzing people that call me as well. But yeah, you just got to constantly be doing that, and that lends to the security aspects of life as well. I mean, things have gotten crazy in the past, we'll say 2 to 5 years. You got to know about your environment, where to go, where not to go. Make sure you're not driving into a protest or a civil unrest, or kind of be aware of your surroundings.
Mm-hmm.
So now, when it comes to like divorce stuff like that, you kind of mentioned a little bit earlier. How often are you involved if maybe there's a little bit higher of a net worth? And the reason I ask this is I remember a divorce attorney a couple of years ago asked me to be an expert witness because one of the parties worked online and made money online to do some investigation. Because sometimes I remember hearing the statement that divorces don't happen in church. Maybe we're not completely honest with one another if we're going through a divorce.
Can you go back to the original question? How often is it high net worth?
For a high net worth, is it worth it to hire an investigator to really see, does the person make X? Do they spend Y or whatever? Because maybe the documentation they're giving to their attorney to go into the divorce isn't really honest when they're trying to make an equitable settlement.
Yeah, crazy people lying during that stuff.
Who would have thought?
Yeah. So yeah, it happens often, and it happens in regular net worth as well, middle class. It happens all the time. And so I get called in a lot. And obviously, once people, I don't know, maybe hear about me or get referred to me, they often like talking to me because I give them the straight scoop. I'm not giving them attorney advice, but I'm letting them know this is happening, this is why, and this is what we can do. And I recommend not doing this. Whereas maybe the attorneys sometimes will drag it out because those billable hours are extremely important to them, some of them at times, which is why I have a good network of ethical attorneys. So yeah, it happens quite often. And, one example, say somebody's in construction and they're going from job to job. And then they say, oh, well, they tell the wife, soon to be ex-wife, well, I'm not working. And she knows darn well that, yeah, you are. And so we'll be called in to be that independent, unbiased party to document those activities. And essentially every client that person has gone to throughout that day, week, however long, is a witness. And so, and a client. And so, all those things and contacts and tentacles that are put out, those are potential witnesses that could be called in. And so oftentimes it takes that evidence. I had a crazy one where the lady stole diamonds from a family business. It was a family law case / civil corporate case. And she says, well, I'm not living with this person. And we had, I don't know, we'll say 3 months of surveillance, date and time stamp photos, videos. They did not want me to testify after they saw the report and the evidence that attached to it. And so it was just constant lie from beginning to end. They'll just never, but you can't dispute that photo, video, testimony.
Yeah, I mean, just going back to what you had described about somebody who says that they're not working, but they are working, I would think that if they got word or if they got an idea that somebody was reaching out, because I can imagine as you go through the process that there's no guarantee that the employers that maybe somebody is working for, they're not going to say that you visited them. So wouldn't that slow that person down just a little bit, or dissuade them, or actually come clean prior to you compiling so much insurmountable evidence that they would be guilty anyway? In other words, do some people just go, all right, if you went to that length, I'm going to reverse my story?
Yeah, but I think so. The more evidence, the better. And I think that, So I think that sometimes people can pass certain things off. Yeah. So So the more evidence, the better. And then, as you know, with court cases, maybe there's a court case on one particular date, and then maybe for 3 months, 3 months later, there'll be another date. And so we'll do those periodic surveillances, and then catch them in multiple lies. And so I agree with you. Yeah, if you got compelling evidence, but sometimes people, whether it's the client or the attorney, want more, which is fine. Whether it's somebody who's claiming an injury, somebody who's claiming that they're working, whatever the case may be. But yeah, I at some point, I'll tell them, I think we're good, but check with your attorney.
If we can switch gears a little bit, you mentioned a little bit earlier about civil unrest, and it kind of made me think about maybe someone is having an issue with someone else. Maybe they're afraid, whether there was a threat or maybe a perceived threat. So if someone is concerned that someone may do something to harm them, what are some of the steps they should go through to start finding out, should they work with a professional? What can they do on their own? What are some of the first steps if I'm concerned for a family member's health, maybe that's in another state, to make sure that they are safe and secure from someone that they're afraid of?
You got to analyze the situation. And I think the theme for a lot of these questions are every situation is different. And so you got to analyze it. And I think first and foremost, if somebody thinks they're really threatened, call 911. But I think you got to look at, so oftentimes we'll get called in and we'll take a look at that, the other person, the person potentially making the threat, their criminal history, their behavior. Do they have, things like this in the past? And then just kind of try to take those steps. And the number one thing I tell clients or potential clients is, you're the number one, you care about your case the most. Nobody else is going to care about your case as much as you. So I always tell them, I'll help you with this, but you need to document everything that's going on, and you need to support it with evidence. And then oftentimes, we go to court where we're protecting people that are trying to get restraining orders, or we're helping them with the restraining order, organize the evidence. So I'll talk to them and help them through that. But a lot of times it's just an emotional mess that they're dealing with. And sometimes they just can't sit down and organize it. Or maybe they bring in things that they think that matters and it doesn't. So I think first and foremost, you really need to look at, okay, what are we dealing with here? Who is the person that's doing this? And then, I always like to say, hey, listen, you need to secure your home. You need to be aware of your surroundings. You need to let your neighbors know. I think right these days you have, Ring. Ring's got a community online. If you get a Ring camera, you get these updates. Hey, this guy tried to break in my car. Be on the lookout for him. There's the neighborhood app. So I think in these days, there's a lot more people that are helping each other out in a community. Mm-hmm. And I think that I think that's important. It's interesting because when I do surveillance, I see people looking at me. So I'll just go up to them and talk to them and go, hey, listen, I have a case down the street and this is what I'm doing. And they'll just leave me alone. Sometimes people will confront me. And it's fine. You got good neighbors. Great. Mm-hmm. But I think, you really got to rally the troops, your neighbors, your family, your friends. And then people can do some of this stuff on their own, whether it's a restraining order or whatever. But yeah, it's people really need to stop, sit down, think about it, and just make sure that they're safe.
Now you mentioned dialing. If I could, real quick, Paul, you mentioned dialing 911. How important is it if you're going to go for, like you said, a restraining order? Anytime you're going to one of the court systems, whether it be civil or family or whatever, to have that documented information of authorities being involved, does that provide you more legitimacy when you are going to some type of court, when you have dated times when authorities have been called, police have been called because of a matter?
That does help. But at the end of the day, what happened there? Was there a report? Was a window broken? Do you have video evidence? Do you have pictures? Because, like I said, I've been to restraining order court, and the judge actually told our client, because they said, hey, well, I Googled this guy and he attacked somebody with a knife on a previous job. And that's another example of you should have had me done a background at the beginning, but okay. But he says, yeah, I Googled this guy and this is what happened. And the judge says people are charged every day. Millions of people are charged every day. I don't care. Show me that he was convicted. And that was actually in the county that incident occurred in the county that they were seeking the restraining order. But it doesn't matter. People will take one little nugget and make it into something huge because it's their case. So to answer your question, Glenn, it helps, but what's behind it? What's the meat of it? Because, okay, he drove by my house or whatever. Okay. That will add up. And that's why I tell people at the beginning of these situations, start with a chronological log of things that have happened with evidence. And if you have unbiased, like me or the police, if you have unbiased people helping you, witnesses, neighbor, whatever, bring them into the fold, because, they already know that you're biased against this individual or this situation.
So how often is an imminent court date associated to the work you do? And how often does the work that you do lead to a potential court date? Or do you know what those percentages feel like?
If it's an ongoing case, I always ask the attorney or client, what's your deadline? What do you want to do? What's your goal? So it's quite often. And then maybe the situation that Glenn was talking about, some investigations could take 6 months to 2 years, depending on the situation. This particular one that I'm working on, this guy's hiding. So we'll get him, but he's a coward and he's hiding. So, but so that one, it's a bunch of evidence gathering, and that's, at the end of the day, you could have a huge 3-ring binder with different sections of organization. And so, eventually it'll get there potentially. But one of the examples that I gave earlier in terms of a business dispute, if the person just wants the money back, then that's the goal. And so maybe they won't seek, especially if it's a relative or somebody they know, they just won't seek criminal, they'll say, give me the money back right now or tomorrow or whatever. And we won't prosecute, whatever deal they make, but it happens quite frequently.
You mentioned a little while ago about, people saying they can't afford something. Here's my perception. Tell me if this kind of holds true. Typically, when we're paying attorney fees by the hour, or if we're going to go to a trial, those fees can add up sometimes and be kind of substantial. So sometimes it's like a ounce of prevention versus a pound of cure. Working with an investigating company could help them settle more often than going to trial. And in the end, they're probably going to spend less than fighting something or letting something kind of drag out and paying attorney fees for a longer period of time.
Yeah. Sometimes it's almost like I got a crystal ball, because I tell them, I've seen these cases before. This is how it happens. And this is what I recommend. And once again, I don't give attorney advice, but this is what I've seen. You can look this case up if you'd like, and this is what I recommend. And so you're right. And I've had clients call me and say, oh, well, I'd rather talk to you than my attorney. I go, yeah, no kidding. I'm less an hour. And so, and like I told, like I mentioned before, people get emotions involved in all of these cases for the most part. And they'll say, well, I'll spend this to get this. And I go, well, how about you just take a step back? Let's do this. And then just kind of work it in phases to where you're not, I have a client right now. I think he's doing a lot of the work on his own. He's pretty smart, doing subpoenas and stuff like that. He said he's into it for hundreds of thousands, never been married to this woman. And it's just child custody. She wants to take full custody and is making all these stupid allegations. But he says he's into it for a couple hundred thousand. It's ridiculous.
Wow. It's interesting. I was going to say a few minutes ago, Glenn, that I was a little jealous of Eric, because I just assumed the majority of his cases had a court deadline. Wouldn't it be great if our clients had a court deadline they had to deal with? Wouldn't that raise accountability quite a bit? Because how often do we work with people and say, well, if you do this, this, and this, And then I usually work with people on a weekly basis, and they'll come back and say, my week was too busy. I just didn't have time to do the work. If we had a court date coming.
I like goals because I have clients that, and they're great people, but they seem to call me for everything. And it's fine. It's fine. I like them. But at some point I'm like, I'll put out videos for all of this stuff and they could just click on the video. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Some people just maybe want you to handle it all, just do it all. Okay. So.
Can you share, maybe obviously hypothetically, but one of the, I guess, gentlest or calmest things that you ever had to do? I mean, we've been talking about how dramatic and traumatic some of these things are and how life-altering the outcome can be. But has anybody ever come to you with a request where you went, that's one of the simpler things, that seems like a walk in the park compared to my normal week? Anything like that come to mind?
Yeah, I mean, I've got some clients that want, security for, hey, my family wants to go here, and this is a long-term client, and to a winery or something like that. And essentially, it's just they just want to hang out and want that peace of mind because the world has gotten so crazy lately in certain areas, obviously, that they don't want any issues. I've got a long-standing assignment that we do on a yearly basis where these people come in from another country, and it's very calm and quiet, but we make sure of that. So in other words, we're going to Target, nice lunches, nice dinners, things like that. So it's good and calm and quiet, but I'm also ready for the chaos and aware of what's going on around us. So it can be that way, but my state of mind's always going to be in that other place.
Well, you're always going to be thinking about potential circumstances that could arise. Sure.
I mean, I've done it all, but it's been great, but I still got to be aware.
Sure. So you're saying, kind of like Patrice Swayze said, you have to be nice until it's time not to be nice?
Hey, man, The Rock says it. Gary Vee says it. It's good to be kind. Kindness counts, man.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be busy if everybody was nice to each other. I mean, how about let's just be nice to each other?
Yeah. That excellent advice. I think that's the theme. Can't we all just get along?
Yeah. Some of these people, some of the clients will call and I go, I want to do this and I want to do this. And, just attack. I said, no. And I'll pull them back. I said, that's not the right thing to do. Let's just work through this case, and no need to make somebody's life a living hell. It's bad enough,
Now, as you were describing some of those circumstances, working private security and whatnot, has there ever been a time where you were asked to, I don't know, put on a disguise or something? Not so much to be, not to try to ferret out information or anything, but I mean, as part of, I guess, as security, where you had to wear certain clothing or take on a certain identity. Anything like that? The James Bond stuff?
Yeah, not so much a certain identity. My philosophy in certain situations with respect to security is sometimes the security will attract attention. So some clients may want, a football player type of security person for that situation. But more often than not, with our clients, they want to be low profile and low key. So I had this one particular client and that's what it was. He wasn't in certain situations, in certain areas, he wasn't too recognizable, but in other scenarios where perhaps there were fans that were in the vicinity, people would recognize. And so sometimes I take on the role of maybe pretending I'm like the manager or something, or somebody thought I was a band member, which is cool. I guess it would be like one of those, oh yeah, I'm a rock star or whatever. But so in terms of people like maybe coming up and wanting to have contact with I'll just kind of Obi-Wan Kenobi them and just say, listen, I can't have him contact with his, I got to keep his voice or his, save it for the show. And can you just keep a distance, or, hey, I'm sorry, I'm sick, I got a cold. I don't want to, can we just keep a distance? And so you just kind of low key it. So no disguise per se, but definitely don't come off like a jerk when you don't, and just because, at the end of the day, these people just maybe want to, I don't know, take a picture or say hi or, hey, thanks for your music inspired me, or this and that. And so you don't want to be rude, but definitely I take on a different persona and just kind of mess with that situation that way.
Yeah, and that's really interesting because you're sort of the de-escalator in a lot of situations like that, which is, that's an admirable quality. What were you going to say, Glenn?
I said David Olson asked, how has the internet scammers changed what you do as a company, as a private investigator?
More cyber. So what we're getting a lot is just a lot more cyber stuff. And we've recently handled one where somebody was posing as a particular Instagram account. I believe she was, maybe some sort of an influencer or something. But cyber has really picked up. Another thing that has picked up quite a lot is people putting spyware on people's phones. And a lot of times it happens in relationships or sometimes business scenarios, but definitely relationships where, people want to know what the other person's doing. But so we do get a lot of calls to analyze the phones and make sure that there's no spyware on them and things like that. So it happens a lot. And, like we talked about earlier with respect to the emails, and sometimes there's really no end in sight or no goal once somebody's, sent that money to Nigeria or wherever they sent it to. Because essentially there's no real police units that handle that type of stuff, maybe on a big scale. Wells Fargo gets hacked or Home Depot or something like that. The FBI will step in, but your local police department's, for the most part, not going to handle a lot of those crimes. So it's definitely impacted the business a lot.
Well, and I have to do with the internet, if I can chime in real quick. Like you mentioned before, when you have an email from somebody, click on the sent, and if it's from the U.S. government, make sure it says .gov.
Yeah.
If it's from the IRS, make sure it's coming from irs.gov, not IRS somewhere in between. If you're getting that text message like you mentioned earlier, and it says it's from Social Security, make sure the link says Social Security. Just take a moment, like you said, slow down, and before you click on that link, and then all of a sudden now they're in your computer, they're in your phone doing what they want.
Yeah, and let's think about it, Glenn. I mean, does the IRS are still sending letters? The government's still sending letters. So, more often than not, I don't know of any, agencies that are sending emails unless you're already kind of in communication with them. Certainly, you can't get a hold of them on the phone.
Trust me, as someone that deals with the VA, it's pulling teeth to get an email.
Mm-hmm.
At least David also says the IRS does not call you. Laughing.
There we go. Yep.
And elders are eligible, are gullible targets. So yeah, I think the more, because they don't send emails probably as much as the rest of us, they don't send text messages. So I think the more we can inform and educate them, the better it's going to be. Lisa's on fire. Says, I work at the PD with elders aren't in social media, so it's up to us to tell our parents. Amen.
Yeah, and then actually control it, and help them out with, whether their bank accounts. I still have clients that write checks and send them, and a lot of them are a little bit older. But if you can, just help them out and just let them know. You just don't click on this, don't do this, and monitor their charges on a, every couple of weeks, things like that.
And it's amazing how, real quick, Paul, if I could, it's amazing the timing they have. I sent a PayPal invoice over to somebody a few months ago, and the gentleman I was working with, his partner was taking care of it. And as the gentleman who got back to the office and caught up with him, he's like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, there's something wrong with my computer and stuff like this. So I'm over getting money at the bank, that one email opens up and now you think there's a problem and you're help paying somebody, and before you know it, here goes money. So be careful, contact a private investigator, contact someone that knows something about this before you send anybody money, people, please.
So Eric, you said that you were 20 years in law enforcement before becoming a private investigator. So let me ask you this in terms of perspective and how much perspectives change. Do you recall having interactions with private investigators while you were a part of law enforcement? And how does that compare to your interactions with law enforcement now that you are the private investigator? Has that perspective changed a little bit? In other words, I guess what I'm asking is your experience, you know how to work with law enforcement, but are there times where private investigators are not all that welcome to work with police?
So the first question: did I ever have interaction with private investigators while in law enforcement? No. As private investigators, if they're going to do a surveillance in a city, they should call the law enforcement agency. Like I mentioned earlier, neighbors will call on you if you're doing a surveillance sometimes.
Yeah.
So it's good to let the police department know so you're not wasting their time sending out a unit to come talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
So you should make the department aware. And then in terms of the interaction, yeah, I mean, my dad was in law enforcement in Chicago for 39 years. So I've gotten to know the language pretty well and how to relate. And every situation is different. One of the cases I mentioned earlier, we were doing 12-hour shifts of night surveillance. So they got to know us pretty well by us calling them. And then suspicious vehicles that would pull up, I would have them check because the potential for a shooting was pretty great in this scenario. So this particular case, there's a detective that's handling. So when somebody calls me and they're a victim of a crime and they want help, I always tell them, and they've made a report. I always tell them to link me up with the detective handling the crime because I never want to step on their toes. And I'm not going to do something without talking to them about it. That's the worst when you have people interrupting your investigation. So it happens quite often. And typically I'm communicating with the detectives handling the case, and then they'll pass that down to patrol. And then when we're doing surveillance, we let them know this is what we're doing. This is the kind of car we're driving, if we're armed or not. And then, kind of what we plan on doing, what we want to do. So yeah, it should be a good working relationship because I'm getting a lot of those calls where I got one yesterday where $150,000 was taken from a safe. They know who it is. It's actually a relative, and they want me to track these people down, and we're going to. And law enforcement just doesn't have the time to do it on this particular crime. There's a lot of other crimes in this particular area that are taking precedent. So yeah, you got to have that good working relationship.
Yeah, it really comes down to, Glenn, it's about respectful communication. Taking the time to actually do that due diligence saves time in the end. Right, Eric?
Yeah, I think a lot of conflicts and a lot of things that occur in the stuff that I deal with, and then just talking with people. You just got to talk with people and just, lay out your goals and, hey, this is who I am, what I'm doing, and how can I help you? And just kind of figure out what makes that person tick. And because, think about it. If I'm going to make somebody else's job easier, that definitely helps them out on a daily basis.
Awesome. Well, it shocks me every week, but our hour's about up, guys. Thank you very much for joining us, Eric. This has been awesome. Should anyone want to reach out and contact you, what's the best mode to do so?
You can go to my website. It's called petersoninvestigations.com. I also have a link tree that links to everything. I'm on Instagram and all that other good stuff. So, but the website will be the best.
Awesome.
Yeah, and just as a little connectivity note, I went to Eric's Peterson Investigations website. And what you did was you sent me your link tree.
Yeah.
And I liked that so much that I actually signed up for one myself because you can put all of those links in one spot. So thank you, Eric. I appreciate your influence on me.
Yeah, if I could just get 10% of all the business that you get through that link tree, we're good. Yeah. And then I just want to verify I'm in an undisclosed location, so you can't tell anybody. And then you're blacking my face out throughout this entire interview because I got a really good undercover assignment tonight. I can't have my face shown on the internet. That's you're doing that, right?
All good, all good. Nothing to worry about at all.
We'll fix it in post.
I'm kidding.
It's where we fix everything.
Yeah.
All right. Great to see everyone here. Anyone watching the replay, you hear where to get in touch with Eric, and you know where to find Glenn and I every Friday at 12 p.m. East and 9 a.m. on the West Coast. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
See you next week.
See you soon.